Hey everyone, Malio here again. After releasing my video explaining the mechanics behind super grinding on Luigi's Circuit, I'm really happy that so many of you enjoy that type of video for Mario Kart Wii. I think it's the first time I've done a video of that style for Mario Kart Wii, so I'll try to keep more coming. Before we go into today's topic, I want to clear up something that was asked in the comments section of my last video. A few people asked if super grinding is useful on any other track, and the sad answer is, as of right now, no other track benefits from super grinding besides N64 Mario Raceway, kinda. Here I'll be showing off a task by Rocky, and I'll have that video linked in the description below. You can start a super grind on Mario Raceway by using the pipes before the last turn. From there, you can gradually make your way through the finish line, and after the first turn, you're kinda at a dead end at that point. However, if you remember from my video of our latest Luigi Circuit task, you'll recall how when we end the super grind, we can get ejected from the floor with significant amounts of airtime. Well, we can use this to our advantage during a flap task, where we aim to complete a single lap as fast as possible by using all 3 mushrooms in one lap, instead of spacing them out across all laps. Instead of trying to take the second turn while super grinding, we can ride up the hill while using our first mushroom, and we can end our super grind right before hitting the out of bounds portion, causing us to eject out of the ground with insane amounts of airtime. From there, we can use another mushroom to preserve airtime and land right in front of the normal shortcut on the track. This saves just under 1 second off of the flap task that doesn't use super grinding. Just to reiterate, for now, this is slower during a 3-lap task because consuming all 3 mushrooms to pull this off, as well as setting up the super grind, just ends up wasting more time than it saves compared to doing the run normally. With that out of the way, let's get on to the rest of the video. In the last video, we focused on Luigi's Circuit because I learned more about the mechanics behind super grinding during the creation of a new tool-assisted speedrun on that track. If you haven't already, please go check out that video on my channel. I'm really happy with how it turned out. As of recently, I've been working with a few other tasters in the community for improving the current Coconut Mall glitch task record of 30.110 seconds. During my attempts at improving the parking lot section of this glitch record, I again felt pretty unsettled about the odd mechanics of how to obtain a lap count each time. Sometimes you had to go wider around the last car to get a lap count, and we never really understood why. Just like with super grinding, after years of this glitch's existence, we can now say we fully understand the mechanics behind the Coconut Mall parking lot lap counts. I don't want to overwhelm anyone who's not at all familiar with the Coconut Mall glitch, so I first want to explain the checkpoint system in the game. Mario Kart Wii has a series of checkpoints that are set throughout each course to track a player's progression as they drive through each lap. However, there are certain special checkpoints that we call key checkpoints. If you were to somehow skip a normal checkpoint, such as through the Bowser Castle shortcut for example, your lap will count like normal. However, if you skip over any of these green key checkpoints and try to complete a lap like normal, your lap will not count. One last thing to note regarding checkpoints, whenever you're inside a key checkpoint region, the only key checkpoints currently loaded in memory are the key checkpoint region you're in, the next key checkpoint in front of you, and the previous key checkpoint. In this example, let's just ignore the regular blue checkpoints. Let's say we start at the finish line. At this point, we're in key checkpoint 0. In front of us, key checkpoint 1 is loaded, and the last key checkpoint of Coconut Mall, key checkpoint 5, right behind us, is also loaded in memory. As we move forward into the next key checkpoint, the next key checkpoint is loaded while key checkpoint 5 is unloaded. So to summarize this again, at any given time, if you're inside a key checkpoint region, only the key checkpoint you're in, the key checkpoint in front, and the key checkpoint behind you are loaded. With that being said, let's talk about the premise of the Ultra Shortcut. There are various different tracks that contain Ultra Shortcuts, but I think the easiest one out of all of them to explain the concept of Ultra Shortcuts is Grumble Volcano. If you shroom at the correct angle on the side of the road, you can get enough airtime to land on this rock. Drive forward enough to pass the finish line, this sets you in key checkpoint 0. Driving around the side of this rock allows you to completely go around the bounds of key checkpoint 0, so the game doesn't detect that you're driving backwards. Remember that I said earlier that at any given time, the key checkpoints immediately in front of you and behind you are also loaded. Because of this, we can go from key checkpoint 0 to the already loaded key checkpoint 4, which is the last key checkpoint region in Grumble Volcano. In doing so, the game detects that we passed from an earlier key checkpoint to a later key checkpoint and thinks that we correctly progressed through the stage. Again, this doesn't work for skipping key checkpoints later in a track, because the key checkpoint after the one you would try to skip isn't loaded in memory. In this scenario, however, the last key checkpoint of the map is loaded, allowing us to get a lap count. So is this always the case? The correct answer is actually no. This information alone is kind of incorrect, and believe it or not, there's an extra piece to the puzzle that no one was quite certain about until now. Let's return back to Coconut Mall, and let's dig into the mechanics behind the glitch. Let's begin by watching an older record just to showcase how runners dealt with the glitch entry, as well as the parking lot. It just so happens that I used to have the world record several times on this track, albeit for only a couple days each, so I'll use one of my older times to showcase what the first main strategy was for the glitch. To start, getting out of bounds requires abusing the game's collision system. Several months before my world record, players used this area right here to get out of bounds. Falling in between these two walls will cause the game to try to eject you in some direction. If you get your angle just right, you can have the front wall push you through the back wall, sending you out of bounds. At the time of my run though, we had just found a new area where we could abuse collision, right by the second escalator. If you nosedive towards this pink block in the wall, and then hold down right after, you could bypass the solid wall of the escalator. Now, the mechanics behind this version of the glitch are still a little unknown. We think it's similar to the glitch on N64 DK's Jungle Parkway. By hitting a horizontal wall, such as the top of this finish line, the game allows you to temporarily pass through normal vertical walls. Well, wasn't the pink block a vertical wall? Actually, if you slow down the video and watch as Daisy slams her head into the wall, she's actually coming into contact with the horizontal bit here first. Because she hit this horizontal wall first, she is able to temporarily pass through the vertical escalator wall. Okay, with all of that out of the way, let's finally move on to the parking lot. Instead of driving straight through the parking lot, I drift to the right and go towards the first palm tree. There's actually an invisible wall along this line, and this sets the boundary for key checkpoint 0. Remember, in order to get a lap count from ultra shortcuts, we need to go from key checkpoint 0 to the last key checkpoint of the map. So we need to pass inside this invisible wall here, trigger key checkpoint 0, and then we can make our way through the rest of the parking lot. Once I approach the last car here, I start drifting to the right, making sure to go just wide enough to pass into the last key checkpoint of the map. The game thinks I've reached the end of the lap correctly, so it triggers the next lap when I cross the finish line. To get laps 2 and 3 to count, we drive up to the mall's wall at key checkpoint 1, turn around, re-enter key checkpoint 0, and then drive to the last key checkpoint of the map. So if you've been paying attention, you may think that this process doesn't seem to make any sense, right? Why would we leave key checkpoint 0, go to key checkpoint 1, and then just turn around and go back into key checkpoint 0? Now here's where things start to get really weird. Remember I said if you can go from key checkpoint 0 to the last key checkpoint by going around the checkpoint bounds, it will count your lap? Except it doesn't work here. Your lap doesn't count on Coconut Mall. Coconut Mall is an exception to the rule. But is exception even the right word? Or is Coconut Mall an opportunity to understand the checkpoint system a little bit further? Let's fast forward almost 2 years from the date of my world record and look at a new strat first performed in the world record time by Japanese player Takemi. He does lap 1 like I do, but after lap 1, he doesn't cross the finish line. Instead, he turns around and jumps over the curb, triggering the next lap to start in the process. This occurs because you can actually cause the lap to trigger by landing anywhere inside key checkpoint 0, with an exception that I'll touch on later. From there, Takemi simply goes to the last key checkpoint of the map and proceeds to repeat what he just did a second time. I won't explain why this works just yet. So now the question we have to ask is, why are you able to get a lap count by doing this curb hop strategy, and otherwise you have to travel all the way to the front of the wall of the mall entrance? The answer lies in the fact that Takemi triggered the lap later than normal. To explain what I mean, let me first show you what happens if we try to get a lap count by crossing the finish line normally, and without traveling to the front of the mall. On screen you can see what we call our lap completion. This is an address in the game's code that keeps track of what percentage of the lap we've completed. If we have a value of 2.5734, for example, then that means we're on the second lap and we're about 57.34% through the lap. In addition, we have a checkpoint display. For that, just focus on the key checkpoint in the parentheses. Watch what happens between both values when we cross the finish line normally, and then go from key checkpoint 0 to the last key checkpoint. You'll probably first notice that we correctly entered key checkpoint 5, but our lap completion dropped to 1.9 instead of staying above 2. Okay, that's weird. Let's go incredibly wide and hit the last key checkpoint from as early in the track as possible by going to the checkpoint's leftmost spot in the parking lot. Still nothing. Let's revisit the idea of Takemi's delayed lap count by hopping over the curb. Players speculated, and testers confirmed that if you got this lap count further up than normal, you could take the turn through the last key checkpoint a lot tighter than if you got the lap count closer to the finish line. Again, we didn't really have a great understanding of why this was, until I started to notice a pattern. Let's focus again on lap completion and the key checkpoint displays, this time while doing Takemi's lap count strategy. Let's pause on the first frame that I triggered the lap, and let's look at our lap completion. It's 2.011214. Now, let's try to enter the last key checkpoint from as far to the right as possible, at a point with a higher lap completion. Okay, this doesn't count the lap. Let's try going more to the left. Aha! Okay, so here it finally lap counts, meaning that to get a lap count, in this situation, we had to reach the last key checkpoint at a lap completion of around 2.961211 or earlier. Subtracting our completion of 2.961211 by our completion when we triggered the lap of 2.011214 gives us 0.949997, which is almost exactly 95%. Okay, well, let's try triggering the lap a little bit earlier, let's say 2.009131. Repeating the process yields that only a lap completion of around 2.959115 or earlier results in a lap count. I repeated this several times for many different lap completion values, and they all spat out the same magic number, 95%. I could never skip more than 95% ahead of my lap completion between the frame that I triggered the lap and when I enter the last key checkpoint. This explains why you can't get a lap count if you first pass through the finish line normally. The Coconut Mall last checkpoint occurs at a value of 95.2% at its earliest, meaning that you will never be able to satisfy the 95% rule, and you will never be able to get a lap count this way. This was the missing piece to the puzzle. The game has a built-in failsafe to prevent cheating and certain ultra shortcuts by preventing lap counts where a player's lap completion jumps up by more than 95%. This explains that Coconut Mall is not an exception to the checkpoint rules, but merely the only example we have thus far to learn about and understand this weird and hidden mechanic. Again, I'd like to reiterate that this 95% rule compares between the lap completion when you enter the last key checkpoint and the first frame that you triggered the lap. It doesn't matter if you travel further into the lap before entering the parking lot, you will not be able to jump to a higher lap completion. After discussing this theory with several people in the community, Grumble Volcano was brought to attention. All we do is go around a tiny rock. There's no way this follows the rule. We're cutting off so much of the track. So actually, Grumble Volcano does not disprove this theory. The farthest into a lap that you can pass through the last key checkpoint is at a lap completion of around 83%. Since this is nowhere close to 95%, the lap will always count for this glitch. For Mushroom Gorge, the last key checkpoint is at about 87% through the lap, so that glitch will always work as well. For every other ultra shortcut, I've verified that it cuts off less than 95% of the track, even including Rainbow Road. With this in mind, there's one track that raises a flag in regards to ultra shortcut potential, and that's DS Desert Hills. Its last key checkpoint occurs at a lap completion of 96%, so unless we can find a way to delay the lap count, it won't ever see an ultra shortcut. Now let's talk about another rule. This time, the magic number is roughly 4.9%. Let's look back at Takemi's lap trigger. He's able to hop over the curb and get the lap count. Again, this is simply because he lands inside key checkpoint 0, so the game updates his progress and therefore counts the lap in the process. I was talking with other people in the community about if this definition is correct, and everyone seemed to agree, but I brought up one crucial tidbit of information. Doing the spin drift over the curb much farther up would not give you a lap count. You're clearly still in key checkpoint 0's region, so what gives? As it turns out, the game has another trick up its sleeve. After making this last turn through key checkpoint 5, you can now see that our lap completion freezes at 1.961464 because we've left the checkpoint region. Now let's watch as I try to spin drift further up. The latest I could trigger the lap was at 2.010525. Let's try this again, but let's take the turn extra wide so that our lap completion increases closer to 2. Let's re-enter the parking lot and let's try spin drifting again. As you can see, we're now able to spin drift anywhere inside the parking lot before key checkpoint 1 and still get a lap count. Just to reiterate everything I said in this video, the game prevents you from jumping 95% ahead of wherever you triggered the lap at. This prevents the current Coconut Mall strategy from lap counting unless you go wide enough to hit the checkpoint before this 95% lap completion. In addition, you cannot get a lap count by going back into key checkpoint 0 unless it's within 5% lap completion of when you left the last key checkpoint. In conclusion, this isn't a game-changing piece of knowledge. It definitely helps us better understand the requirements for a more optimal Coconut Mall glitch task, but other than that, it doesn't affect much else. Nonetheless, it's really enjoyable to continuously learn more about the inner workings of one of your favorite games this many years later. This video was a lot longer than I initially expected, but thank you so much for sticking around to the end. It was really exciting to research into the Coconut Mall lap count mechanics, investigate the underlying 95% and 5% rules, and test it out on a bunch of tracks. If you guys have any suggestions for future video ideas, I would love to hear what you guys have to say in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe to see more videos like this and tasks in the future. Make sure to be on the lookout for our improved Coconut Mall 3-lap glitch task, which will be out soon, and until next time, thanks for watching.